There's a specific kind of thriller that doesn't just surprise you once. It makes you distrust everything you thought you understood about the first hour, forcing you to mentally rebuild the entire film from scratch the moment the credits roll. 15 of those films just quietly landed on Prime Video, at no extra cost beyond your existing subscription. There is a film where a woman trapped on a loop, living the same moments over and over, each loop revealing she understands less than she thought. There's a film where a group of friends at a dinner party lose power during a passing comet, and what happens next turns a simple evening into one of the most genuinely disorienting science fiction experiences ever made. And there's a film about a father convinced God has personally chosen his family for a violent mission, and a framing story that keeps recontextualizing whether he was right. I'm not going to tell you how any of these ends. That would ruin the entire experience. I'm going to tell you exactly enough to make you press play, and trust the rest to wreck you properly. 15 films, ranked. Let's go. Number 15. Shattered. I need to be careful here, because the entire pleasure of this film depends on you knowing almost nothing going in. Tom Berenger plays a man who survives a car crash with total amnesia, forced to rebuild his entire identity from what other people tell him. His wife's account, old photographs, a life he has to take entirely on faith because none of it exists in his own memory anymore. Wolfgang Petersen directed this, and what makes Shattered genuinely unsettling is the specific texture of its amnesia. Dan isn't just missing memories, he's meeting a version of himself he has no access to, filtered entirely through people who keep insisting he was a very particular kind of man. His wife, played by Greta Scacchi, becomes increasingly central to that unreliability. Every detail she offers could be true, or could be exactly what she needs him to believe. The film gives you two competing versions of nearly every character, the one Dan reconstructs, and the one that slowly surfaces as the investigation unravels, and trusts you to hold both versions simultaneously while the gap between them closes. A slick, confident, genuinely twisty thriller that the 1990s largely forgot about. Number 14. The Awakening. Skeptics make the best horror protagonists, because they need considerably more convincing than the rest of us before they'll actually admit something's wrong.
Miss Cathcart, I'm a history master at a boys' prep school. I was sent to request your help. You are a ghost hunter as well as an author.
You can't hunt what doesn't exist.
We think we have one that does.
A professional skeptic makes her living exposing fraudulent ghost sightings, and then gets sent somewhere that refuses to cooperate with her explanations. Rebecca Hall plays Florence, a hoax debunker working in 1921 England, still reeling from the First World War's enormous casualties, and the desperate grief that made an entire generation want to believe in spirits. She's called to a remote boarding school after a student's death is blamed on a ghost, fully expecting to find the usual rigged wires and hidden speakers. What she finds instead genuinely resists her explanations. Nick Murphy directs with a patient, atmospheric dread that trusts silence and shadow over jump scares. Dominic West plays a teacher at the school with his own war trauma, and the growing tension between Florence's rationalism and what's actually happening around her builds toward a reveal that recontextualizes her own things in ways she never saw coming. A genuinely well-crafted British ghost story with more on its mind than simple scares. Number 13. The Endless. Two brothers escape a UFO death cult as teenagers. A decade later, they receive a video message from the camp, and the younger brother wants to go back, just to visit, just to get some closure. That decision is the last normal thing that happens in this film.
How is that possible?
Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead write, direct, produce, and star in it. Two filmmakers who operate completely outside the studio system, and who are, without question, two of the most interesting genre directors working today. What they built here on a micro-budget is a film about time, about cults, about the psychological grip of a place that made you feel like you belonged. The film is genuinely frightening in a way that doesn't rely on cheap mechanics. The dread is slow and cumulative. The camp looks normal. The people seem happy. And the wrongness creeps in at the edges. A rope that hangs from the sky with nothing at the other end. A game of tug-of-war with something on the other side that you never see. The ending is the kind that reframes everything you watched before it. Quiet, inevitable, and completely earned. Almost nobody has seen this film. That's a genuine injustice. Number 12, PANDORUM. Losing your memory is frightening enough on solid ground. Losing it on a ship you can't get off of makes it something else entirely.
Where's the rest of the crew?
I don't really know, sir.
2 crew members wake from hypersleep with no memory of who they are, where they're going, or how long they've actually been asleep. And the ship around them is not remotely as empty as it should be. Dennis Quaid and Ben Foster play astronauts aboard a massive generation ship, disoriented and alone, piecing together fragments of a mission gone catastrophically wrong, while something considerably more dangerous than memory loss stalks the ship's darkened corridors. Christian Alvart directs this as claustrophobic sci-fi horror, leaning into the specific terror of confined spaces and unreliable memory simultaneously. What elevates PANDORUM above standard space horror mechanics is the psychological condition the title actually refers to, a real, documented form of space-induced psychosis that the film uses as the seed for a genuinely disorienting mystery about what's actually happened to the ship's crew across generations of the voyage. A genuinely underseen sci-fi thriller that deserved a much bigger audience than it got on release. Number 11. STONEHEARST ASYLUM. A young doctor arrives at a remote Gothic asylum, eager to learn from its visionary director, and it does not take long for him to realize that something about this institution is deeply, fundamentally wrong.
The doctor will be along shortly. You have my word you won't be harmed.
Jim Sturgess plays Edward Newgate, newly graduated and arriving at Stonehurst under the supervision of Dr. Silas Lamb, played by Ben Kingsley, whose unconventional treatment methods and magnetic confidence keep Edward from asking the questions he probably should be asking much sooner. Brad Anderson directed this loose adaptation of Edgar Allan Poe's, and assembled a genuinely stacked cast. Kate Beckinsale, Michael Caine, David Thewlis, and Brendan Gleeson, all circling a mystery that keeps recalibrating exactly who is actually in control of the institution. Poe's original story was a satirical provocation about who really belongs in charge of an asylum, and the film's central twist takes that provocation seriously rather than using it as a simple gimmick. A stylish, criminally overlooked Gothic thriller with one of the most purely fun ensemble casts on this whole list. Number 10. Open Your Eyes. Before Tom Cruise ever remade this as Vanilla Sky, there was the original Spanish film, and a lot of people who've seen both still prefer this version. Eduardo Noriega plays Cesar, a wealthy, arrogant young man whose face is disfigured in a car accident orchestrated by a jealous ex-lover, sending him into a spiral of identity collapse that blurs completely between what's actually happening to him and what he might be imagining, dreaming, or something considerably stranger than either. Alejandro Amenábar directed this, years before he made the others, and what makes Open Your Eyes so effective is its total commitment to disorientation. The film keeps shifting the ground under Cesar and the audience simultaneously, refusing to clarify what's real until it's completely ready to. Here's what makes this worth watching even if you've already seen the American remake. The ending lands with a specific philosophical weight about identity, consciousness, and control that the more polished Hollywood version softened considerably. Penelope Cruz, reprising her role from the original alongside the American remake years later, is extraordinary here. Strange, unsettling, and genuinely ahead of its time. Number 9. Frailty. Bill Paxton directed this, his first and tragically only feature as a director. It is extraordinary. A father wakes his 2 young sons in the middle of the night and tells them God has given him a mission: to destroy demons walking among us in human form. The demons look like ordinary people, only he can see what they really are. The film is told in flashback. Matthew McConaughey plays the adult version of one of the sons, recounting this story to an FBI agent played by Powers Booth. And what Paxton does with that framing is something genuinely courageous. He never tells you whether the father is a prophet or a madman. He makes both readings completely available, simultaneously, all the way to the end. Bill Paxton plays the father, and his performance, gentle, loving, certain, is the most frightening thing in the film. Not because he seems dangerous, because he seems right. The boys believe him. The final act has a revelation that reframes everything. It is one of the finest endings in American thriller cinema of the 20s. Almost nobody talks about this film. Bill Paxton deserved a longer directing career. This is the evidence. Number 8, Arlington Road. Jeff Bridges plays Michael Faraday, a university professor who teaches about domestic terrorism, whose wife, an FBI agent, was killed in a botched raid. So he already knows what paranoia feels like. He already knows how it warps things, which makes it even harder to trust himself when his new neighbors start acting strangely. Tim Robbins plays Oliver Lang, affable, family man, great with his kids. And Jeff Bridges is not sure whether he's a terrorist or whether he's just projecting. The genius of Arlington Road is that question. Is Faraday paranoid or right? And the film holds it beautifully, longer than you'd expect, letting you oscillate, letting you decide, getting you quietly invested in the possibility that it's just paranoia. And then the ending arrives. I won't say what happens. I'll say that when it came out in 1999, it felt like a provocative thriller. Watching it now, it feels like something stranger, more uncomfortable, more prophetic. It's the kind of film that sticks with you not because of how it ends, but because of what that ending means. Number 7, Memoir of a Murderer, Korean cinema, and a concept so original that I have to be careful not to give too much away.
오늘 새벽 강화시에서 여성의 사체가 발견됐습니다.
Byung-soo, a retired veterinarian with a gentle manner and a devoted daughter. He also spent several decades as a serial killer. He stopped after a car accident 17 years ago, and the same accident gave him Alzheimer's disease, which is now advancing. When he crosses paths with a young policeman who starts dating his daughter, Byung-soo becomes convinced, with the bone-deep instinct of a predator recognizing a predator, that this man is a killer, and that his daughter is in danger. Here's the concept that makes this film extraordinary. The protagonist cannot trust his own memory. Is Tae-ju actually a murderer? Or is Byung-soo's Alzheimer's distorting his perception of an innocent man? The film uses his unreliable memory as a sustained structural thriller device, giving you scenes that shift meaning completely when revisited. And it builds to an ending that hits like a door slamming. The central performance by Sul Kyung-gu is one of the great performances I have seen. South Korean cinema has a particular genius for taking a premise and following it to its most uncomfortable conclusion. This is a pristine example of that. Number 6, The Imposter. This is a documentary, not a fiction film, and I promise you it's stranger than anything a screenwriter could have invented. A 13-year-old boy vanishes from Texas without a trace. 3 years later, a man in his 20s, with a French accent and dark eyes where the missing boy had blue ones, shows up in Spain claiming to be him, and an entire grieving family accepts him. Bart Layton directed this, blending real interview footage with dramatized reenactments. And what makes The Imposter genuinely mind-bending is the question it refuses to answer comfortably. How does an entire grieving family convince themselves to accept an obvious stranger as their missing son? And what does that acceptance actually reveal about what they needed to believe? Here's what makes this more unsettling than a scripted thriller. Bourdain himself appears on camera throughout, articulate and unnervingly charming, walking you through his own deception with a confidence that makes the family's willingness to believe him almost disturbingly understandable. One of the best documentaries of the last 15 years, fictional thriller or not, it more than earns its spot on this list. Number 5, No Way Out. Here's a genuinely brutal position to put a character in. Assign him to solve a murder he has very personal reasons to hope never gets solved. A Navy officer is having a secret affair with a woman who turns out to be the mistress of the Secretary of Defense. And when she's murdered, that same officer gets assigned to lead the investigation into her death. Kevin Costner, in one of his earliest leading roles, plays Tom Farrell, and the premise alone would be tense enough. A man forced to investigate a murder he has every reason to suspect might implicate him personally, racing to control an inquiry that keeps getting closer to evidence he desperately needs buried. Gene Hackman plays the Secretary of Defense, whose own cover-up efforts collide directly with Farrell's increasingly desperate maneuvering. Roger Donaldson directs a Cold War thriller with a reveal in its final minutes that recontextualizes literally everything you've watched. I won't describe it, but it's widely regarded as one of the most effective third-act twists of its decade, precisely because the film plants every piece of it in plain sight without you noticing. A genuinely tense political thriller with an ending that still catches first-time viewers completely off guard. Number 4. The Body. Here comes the Spanish thriller that does something none of the others on this list attempt. It strips the mystery thriller down to almost nothing and discovers that almost nothing is more than enough.
¿Cómo que ha desaparecido? ¿La que ha desaparecido?
¿Qué?
Su cuerpo ha desaparecido de la morgue.
Está muerta, ¿no?
Sé lo que ha hecho y cómo lo ha hecho. Está muerta.
Seguro.
A woman's body is found in a morgue, and then it isn't there anymore. Inspector Jamie Pena is called to investigate. He has a body that has disappeared from a locked facility with no obvious means of exit, witnesses who contradict each other, and a husband, played by Jose Coronado, who is not behaving the way a grieving husband is expected to behave. Oriol Paulo directed the body, and if that name doesn't mean anything to you yet, you seriously need to check out his filmography. He is one of the finest architects of mystery thriller mechanics working in European cinema, and The Body is the film that announced it. What Paulo understands, and what most mystery thrillers forget, is that the simplest possible premise, executed with complete precision, generates more tension than an elaborate plot that hasn't earned it. A body, a locked room, a husband who knows more than he's saying. That's the whole machine, and it runs perfectly. The ending does something I genuinely did not see coming from a direction I should have been watching the entire time. That's the mark. Find it yourself. Number 3. Lucky Number Slevin.
Fisher, listen to me.
I already told you. I'm not Nick Fisher.
Slevin Kalevra arrives in New York for a low-key visit to a friend's apartment, gets mistaken for someone who owes considerable money to 2 rival crime bosses, and finds himself thrown into a plot involving assassination, revenge, and a scheme considerably more elaborate than anyone around him initially lets on. Paul McGuigan directed Lucky Number Slevin, and what unfolds is a stylish, twist-heavy thriller that keeps recontextualizing its own plot mechanics right up until its final act. A film that rewards close attention with a payoff that reframes nearly every scene that came before it. Josh Hartnett plays Slevin with a wry, controlled confidence that keeps the audience guessing about exactly how much he actually understands about the situation he's supposedly caught in. Bruce Willis, Morgan Freeman, Ben Kingsley, and Lucy Liu round out a cast operating with genuine relish, each given dialogue sharp enough to make even the film's exposition-heavy sequences genuinely entertaining. A slick, quotable, genuinely clever thriller that rewards a second watch once you know where it's going. Number 2. Coherence. $50,000. 5 nights. The director's living room. Actors given character outlines, not scripts, and told to improvise everything.
This is bad. This is really bad.
What's the box?
That was at the other house.
Oh my God.
Jamie, what did you see?
Hugh, what did you see?
8 friends gather for a dinner party on the same night a comet is passing unusually close to Earth. Phones start glitching. The power goes out across the whole neighborhood, except for one house, glowing in the distance. And one by one, the group starts noticing that small, specific details about their own night don't add up. Shot on a tiny budget, with a mostly improvised script, and a cast working from scene outlines rather than full dialogue, Coherence builds its mind-bending premise on real quantum physics concepts, filtered through 8 increasingly panicked dinner guests trying to figure out what's actually happening outside. The scope of what's going on keeps expanding scene by scene, and by the halfway point, you'll be doing the exact same frantic math the characters are, working out what's real from nothing but the clues in front of them. One of the smartest, most purely disorienting micro-budget thrillers of the last 15 years. The kind of movie people immediately want to rewatch just to catch what they missed. Number 1. Triangle. I place this at number 1 because this is, without a doubt, the most precisely constructed, mind-bending thriller on this entire list. Melissa George plays Jess, a single mother who joins friends on a yachting trip that goes catastrophically wrong when a sudden storm capsizes their boat. And when the survivors are picked up by a passing ocean liner that appears completely deserted, Jess begins experiencing events that feel less like a rescue and more like the beginning of something that's already happened to her before. Christopher Smith wrote and directed this, and what makes Triangle one of the most genuinely disorienting thrillers ever made is its structure. The film doesn't simply repeat a single day, it builds a genuinely rigorous, internally consistent loop where each pass reveals new information that recontextualizes everything that Jess, and you, thought you understood about the ones before it. And by the time the full shape of what's actually happening becomes clear, the film has constructed one of the most emotionally devastating explanations for a time loop ever put on screen, rooted entirely in grief and guilt, rather than science fiction mechanics for their own sake. Melissa George carries the film's mounting horror and heartbreak almost entirely alone, in a performance that gets more remarkable the more of the puzzle you understand. The best film on this list. One of the finest mind-bending thrillers ever made, and also one of the most underseen. That's the end of today's list. 15 mind-bending thrillers, all sitting on Prime Video at no extra cost. Now, I want to hear from you. Which of these have you already seen, and which one are you watching tonight? And out of everything on this list, which ending do you think is the most genuinely shocking? Also, how did you like this video? Your feedback genuinely helps me make better recommendations and create videos you'll enjoy even more. And if you enjoy the video, do like and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.